Hello everyone, here is part 2 of our page. I'm going to go from these, if you've missed the first piece, there will be a link below so you can see how I broke down this page from the quote Marvel style script, which I love working from, which James Tinian wrote, and how I broke down the individual panels. Now I'm going to go in just from finding the beats to discovering which of these beats are the most important on the page. Are they equally as important? In the tone of this kind of story, which is we're doing a very kind of documentary style retelling of one of the first and best known UFO abduction cases, the Betty and Barney Hill case. So I'm not approaching this with like sort of bombastic panels or crazy skewed angles. Like I'm trying to draw this in a documentary style where the camera is a character, the camera has a point of view, and that's what we're going to get into here. Now that we've discovered the beats, which you'll see in the other video. This is fun. Usually, what I do is very loosely, like this is not proportional. That's my comic page, and I'll just kind of sketch that out here on the side. There will be no figures in here. I'm just going to figure out the spacing on the page. The spacing on the page is not only how many panels, but which panels take up the most real estate on the page, which panels need to be emphasized, or if they're all sort of equal. It all depends on the pacing. This is a quiet scene. A bit of it's... actually, I think the full page will probably be all done with captions and narration. There's probably a little bit of dialogue. So it's a little like offset. So we're definitely observing all this as opposed to... experiencing it from the inside of the story. We're watching from the outside of the story, if that makes any sense. Okay, so start with Benjamin Simon sitting in his office. We establish a few of his credentials and how he had been recommended to Betty and Barney. Most notably, we discussed that he was skeptical about the existence of UFOs and he's willing to help the Hills given Barney's health issues and Betty's nightmares. He warned them that this wasn't a road to objective truth, but could prove clarity. Over the weeks, established necessary conditions in which the Hills would respond to techniques, and they would forget about what they had discussed at the end of each session so that they could not share each other's stories with one another. Begin with Barney Hill. So I think this is probably the biggest panel we need because there seems to be the most discussion here, the most... this gets to the root of the page. That their relationship with this psychiatrist, this hypnotherapist, he's not there to help tell their story. He's just there to give them clarity. He's not a believer. He wants to be objective. He's just trying to help them through this thing that they've experienced. So I think this is going to be the largest of the panels. And in this kind of storytelling, that doesn't mean this is a big, flashy panel. It just needs more space, so it's going to probably be a very widescreen panel. Also, very importantly, this story we're writing and designing not for your average comic book reader because this is on like a big website, the Substack newsletter website stuff. Most people reading this will probably not be comic book readers, so I want to make sure that the panels are as easily laid out as possible for them. So for these first two panels, I want a decent sized shot of establishing him in his office and his credentials. So the credentials are probably a little bit smaller of a shot. Like I want to do just like the wall, and it's got like I had figured it out before. And then this first panel here is going to be Dr. Benjamin Simon in his office. So basically, this will be slightly larger than the second panel. Third panel is what we're discussing. We need the most amount of space, so it's going to be a big, wide panel. And then panels 4 and 5, I'm going to keep these horizontal as well. So we'll go, this will be a bigger panel. These will be slightly smaller. That's how we're going to start. And this is just me figuring out the space on the page. This is not literal in any sense. So, yeah, we'll just get started. And I have to keep in mind where the camera is so that I make sure you guys can see this. Alright, these are the first two panels. I'm kind of eyeing this, and I might adjust this after I scan in my works. So this is about right. And this is just regular photocopy paper that I'm working on. And I can't quite figure out my camera setup so that you can see the page. It's close enough, but I can also, this is a whole thing. Never mind. Let's just get into the laying out part. Okay, we start with Benjamin Simon sitting in his office. Again, documentary style. I'm going to go really straightforward with this. So we're going to see, I'm going to freehand out all of my perspective. This dude in his office. Yeah, I use a lot of like Google SketchUp and stuff, and I'll probably bust that out later, but I'm not sure. For now, I'm going to think of a 1950s style office. He's probably got a typewriter over here, old ass Rolodex. Very, very loose figure work here. Because right now, I just want to get stuff on the page. You know, I'm not thinking anything more than about the real estate on the page and the actual shots of the page. And I wanted this to be straightforward. Again, there's going to be basically captions with narration, documentary style. That's what I'm thinking here. So we're going to have like his desk. I got to make sure it feels late 1950s, early 1960s. And I'll figure out the details later. Let me see. Then established a few of his credentials and how he'd been recommended to Betty and Barney. I think this is where I was saying, probably have like a shot of him looking at like a folder. Let's pretend like he got a folder in this recommendation, and it's got photos Betty and Barney Hill. So he's kind of looking at the case he's been recommended. And then right over here, we're talking about the credentials. So let's make sure that there are some some frames that establish, he went to this college or whatever. And I want to make sure they're off to the side because there's going to be captions up here. And I need to make sure there's space for our letter or for a detail. And there we go. I'm not too worried about getting this angle right or anything. Like it's just laying out these two shots. His office, or dude in an office, and then here's him getting the recommendations and think about it, and his credentials. A few shots of his credentials and how he'd been recommended by Betty and Barney Hill. So here we go. We get to see Betty and Barney Hill. This is the recommendation. These are the credentials. This is the guy in his office. Simple. Panel 3, most notably, we discussed that he was skeptical about the UFOs, about the existence of UFOs, but he was willing to help with to help with the Hills, give him Barney's health issues and Betty's nightmares. He warned them this wasn't a road to objective truth, but he could provide clarity. So sort of the tempting, low-hanging fruit version of this would be some image of Dr. Benjamin Simon with like a montage in the background of, whatever Barney's health issues I would want to illustrate, and Betty having nightmares and rolling around and stuff. But we're not going for that kind of vibe. We're going for something a little more subtle. Oh, sorry about that. Going for something a little more subtle. So this is where I thought it would really work to have Dr. Benjamin Simon, like he's there to just help them on their path, just to help them with clarity. He doesn't believe in UFOs, so I think a good shot here would be, we'll have the folder with Betty and Barney Hill next to it, and Dr. Benjamin Simon reading up on UFOs. And we're going to actually have him reading the same book that Betty checked out earlier in the story, which I'm forgetting the title of. One of the things I would do right now is grab my phone or go to my computer and like literally look up man reading a book or a woman reading a book, because it's just the pose. It doesn't matter if it's a man or woman. I'm just looking for like a hand position and like an interesting shot. I'm not going to do that right now because it would just be too distracting. So I'll just do old school and just kind of lead right into it. So let's go like, I'm going to go for a low angle shot of him reading a book. It's going to be difficult to see if I pull off, and if I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. I can retry it. I can always do my best here and then trying to find better photo reference online that I either copy by hand or even outright trace, as long as I'm drawing myself over on top of it, you know, not being a slave to the photo, but using it as a breakdown like this. I've got some other videos on that. If you look up how I use photo reference on my YouTube channel, you'll see it. So I imagine he's in a comfy couch reading. Let me see. Or low angle, kind of coming this way. Or maybe it's like a reading chair. Oh, this is not working out. Scribbling is important. This was something that I read in one of John Buscema's art books, and he would talk about scribbling and like how essential it was to finding a form and shape. And that's definitely true right here, because I wasn't quite sure the proportions of like how the foreground objects are going to be, and the chair I'm kind of guessing and stuff. And then I realized as I drew the chair first that he isn't going to fit in, his head be way up here. So I'm going to forget about that, and I'm just going back to scribbling in shapes. He's got his legs crossed. He's going to be reading the same book that Betty Hill was earlier. And I gotta imagine, well, what does an academic's lounge look like? He's probably got some fancy freaking lamp with frills on it and stuff, and like a doily thing here for some reason. He's from the 50s. There's probably a Bible over here, pictures of his family, a little library. And then in the foreground here, yeah, here's that envelope here with Betty and Barney Hill. So they're in the scene without being in the scene. It's still focused on him. Totally jumping ahead, I'm going to be using, when I ink this, my shadows and light and contrast to really focus on the book, Betty Barney Hill, and his face. But we'll get to there later. I think that's all I need, and I can figure out the specifics of this chair and couch and stuff later. But I've got what I need here. And final two panels. 1 second.